Right now, tensions are brewing between South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, EFF leader Julius Malema, Elon Musk, and US President Donald Trump. Last week, Trump announced that he had suspended aid to South Africa because, according to him, the South African government is doing very bad things to a certain group of people. This group of people he was referring to is the white minority group in South Africa. Since this announcement, many have speculated that the richest man in the world, who is also a very close ally of Trump, is the one instigating Trump to punish South Africa. Recently, the South African president Cyril Ramaphosa made a very interesting call to Elon Musk. Meanwhile, the leader of South African EFF, Julius Malema, has also been dragged into the conflict. But what exactly is going on? Let's find out.
Mr. President, so on Free Social, you said that you were going to cut aid from South Africa. Will you plan to cut aid across other African nations, and why South Africa?
No, it's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
It all started with President Trump's announcement last week. In a message published on his Truth Social platform, US President Trump stated, "South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to so much as mention. A massive human rights violation, at a minimum, is happening for all to see." Later on, Trump added that the leadership and administration of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa are doing some horrible things that are currently being investigated by the US. And until the whole issue is determined, all future funding to South Africa has been put on hold. Trump's statement was in response to the newly approved South African land reform. According to the ANC, the land reform bill is an attempt to correct historical injustice that put private ownership of more than 75% of South African land in the hands of the white minority. The bill is supposed to make it easy for the state to expropriate land in the public interest to address racial disparities in land ownership after apartheid ended in 1994. If you recall, during the apartheid era in South Africa, the black majority in South Africa was oppressed in all possible ways, including housing and land ownership. In 1913, the British colonial authorities passed legislation that restricted the property rights of the country's black majority. The Natives Land Act left the vast majority of the land under the control of the white minority and set the foundation for the forced removal of black people to poor homelands and townships in the intervening decades until the end of apartheid 3 decades ago. However, even though Mandela ended the apartheid regime when he became the first democratically elected president in 1994, the Native Land Act remained in force until now. The new Expropriation Act outlines the legal framework for the government to expropriate private property for public purposes or in the public interest, setting rules for how compensation should be determined. While the act generally mandates fair compensation, it also allows for certain cases in which no compensation may be paid, provided it is deemed just and reasonable. However, for some reason, which we now know as Elon Musk, Trump decided to meddle in South African affairs. The South African government has newly signed the expropriation law and has not begun to implement it. Yet President Trump wrongly told the world that South Africa has confiscated land from some people. Even certain groups, such as AfriForum in South Africa, have criticized the law and have publicly stated that Trump was wrong in claiming any land had been taken away. So, who gave Trump such information? All eyes have turned to the world's richest man, Elon Musk, who is also a South African. Born in Pretoria in 1971, Musk left South Africa 2 weeks before his 18th birthday for Canada and the US. However, Musk has been quite critical of the ANC government. In a tweet this month, Musk attacked Ramaphosa's government, asking, "Why do you have openly racist ownership laws?" In another tweet, he said that South Africa is steadily becoming a communist country. Musk has also accused South African President Cyril Ramaphosa of implementing openly racist ownership laws. In 2023, criticizing the president for failing to act against radical black politicians who sang a song with the lyrics, "Kill the Boer." Boer, the Afrikaans word for farmer, is used to refer to white Afrikaners generally. In addition to the land law, Musk has criticized the government's affirmative action policies and has falsely claimed that the killings of some white farmers amount to genocide. The killings have been condemned, but according to experts, they are part of South Africa's appallingly high levels of violent crime and are generally connected to farm robberies. With this, it's pretty clear that Musk is not a big fan of the South African government. However, the South African president has rejected Trump and Musk assertions. Responding to Trump's comments on X, President Cyril stated that South Africa is a constitutional democracy that is deeply rooted in the rule of law, justice, and equality. The recently adopted expropriation law is not an instrument of confiscation, but a legal process mandated by the Constitution that guarantees public access to land in a fair and just manner, as provided for in the Constitution. South Africa, like the United States of America and other countries, has always had expropriation laws that balance the need for public land use and the protection of landowners' rights. The president also clarified that the new law targets land that is unused or not being utilized in the public interest, and property rights are protected. This simply means that the government only intends to take back lands that have remained unused for years and use them for public interest. Ramaphosa also added that except for the AIDS relief program run by the U.S. Agency for International Development USAID, no other significant funding is provided to South Africa by the United States. This clearly implies that the suspension of funds would have no impact on the South African economy. Now, in response to Musk, President Ramaphosa has stated that Musk's criticism of the government was full of misinformation and distortions. This is why a day after Trump's suspension of aid, Ramaphosa put a call through to Musk to set him straight. According to South Africa's spokesperson Vincent Magwenya, the president's conversation with Musk was logical. The call was set up by Musk's father. During the call, the president reiterated South Africa's constitutionally embedded values of respect for the rule of law, justice, fairness, and equality. But here is the million-dollar question: why exactly does Trump dislike the South African government? Is it truly about fighting for the white minority? Aside from the fact that Musk has been quite vocal against the government over the years, the recent tension might have just resurfaced as a result of Starlink. Before the Expropriation Act was signed, one of Musk's companies, Starlink, had planned to expand into South Africa. The telecommunication company, which has one of the fastest internet connections, has been deployed to several countries in Africa. However, it has faced a significant roadblock in South Africa as a result of regulatory issues. You see, in a bid to address the historical injustices faced by Black South Africans as a result of apartheid, the South African government issued a law that required multinational companies to allocate 30% equity to Black ownership. This simply means that any company in South Africa, including foreign companies, is required to have 30% equity for Black ownership. However, Elon Musk doesn't want to fulfill this requirement, and as such, its legal license has been stalled. Interestingly, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa launched a hearing to gather industry input on its proposed South African satellite services licensing framework. A key objective is to establish a registration process for international satellite operators looking to provide services directly or through partnerships with licensed local providers. Meanwhile, Musk has been lobbying the South African government to reconsider its 30% shareholding requirement for historically disadvantaged groups. However, Starlink has reportedly withdrawn from the hearing at the same time Trump announced the suspension of aid. Perhaps when Musk accused South Africa of having openly racist ownership laws, he was referring to South Africa's refusal to heed to his demands to scrap the 30% shareholding requirement. Now, there have been concerns that Starlink as a privately owned foreign technology company could undermine South Africa's national security. According to some experts, Starlink could be used to manipulate and exploit South Africa's digital infrastructure. But by granting 30% ownership, South Africa can look out for itself. However, regardless of the criticisms from Trump and Musk, President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that South Africa will not be bullied. In his address to the nation, he said, We are witnessing the rise of nationalism, protectionism, the pursuit of narrow interest, and the decline of common cause. This is the world that we as South Africa, a developing economy, must now navigate. But we are not to be daunted as we navigate our path through this world that is constantly changing. We will not be deterred. We as South Africans are resilient people, and we will not be bullied. Obviously, by this, the president is referring to Trump's threat. Now, how did the leader of South Africa's economic freedom fighter, Julius Malema, come into this issue? Well, 7 years ago, Julius Malema made a controversial statement in a video, where he said that South Africa's opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, only supported its white leaders. In the video, he said, "So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go for a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Sali will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are staring with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness."
Alliance shoot to kill Yamaza, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa. Attention.
Given the controversial land reform that Musk said is targeting white minorities, Musk decided to respond to this 7-year-old clip. In his tweet on X, Musk called for sanctions to be imposed on Malema and demanded that Malema be branded an international criminal. In response, Malema didn't hold back. He wrote, "I really think you have entirely lost your left brain, a typical spoilt brat and direct beneficiary of apartheid whiteness. I know black people look the same to you, typical racist. Look closer, and you will realize those are two different people. America is exposing us to its stupidity. I don't care about your sanctions. I will never stop fighting for black people to be equal to white people, and if that makes me an international criminal, I am proud to be one." Malema's party, the EFF, also released a statement dismissing Musk's call for sanctions as part of a broader pattern of hysteria in the United States. The statement also accused him of meddling in global politics despite being nothing more than a businessman. Musk has been described by the EFF as a global billionaire maniac who believes he has the right to dictate political affairs of sovereign nations. The EFF spokesperson also added that the EFF and all people who have been at the yoke of oppression perpetuated by the USA and its allies are bound to naturally be the quintessential enemies of billionaires who capture states and manipulate narratives and misuse their control of governments to cast dispersions against their natural enemies. The EFF takes the opportunity to tell Elon Musk and all of his allies in the USA, in Israel, and the right-wing groups in South Africa, which have mobilized Musk to collectively go to hell. The principle remains that equality in South Africa is rooted in the return of the land to South African people, and this would be achieved through expropriation without compensation. The party further claimed that Musk has captured the US presidency and is using his influence to push a global capitalist agenda. Right now, the situation is tense on both sides. The question is, how will this eventually play out? Will the South African government remain steadfast in its ideals? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and share.